In this Divinity Original Sin 2 video, I'm going to be showing you 5 OP builds that you can play in the game. These don't necessarily all work together, but most of them do. And I know I haven't done Divinity Original Sin 2 content in a very long time, but the game is popping right now. People are playing it with the announcement of the new Divinity game coming out. And it's on sale right now, if I'm not mistaken, so it's a good time to pick it up if you haven't played it. It is one of my all-time favorite RPGs, and I am super excited about the new announcement of Divinity. So without further ado, let's get into these OP builds that you can use. So the first build on my list is the Eternal Warrior build. This is my most popular build that I've ever made for this game. You could even make a case that it is the most popular or a variation of the most popular build in the game, and there's some very, very good reasons for it. So the very first reason is the absolute amount of damage you deal with this build. You deal very, very good damage, and the reason for that is that you use a two-handed melee weapon, so you have basically the most damage in a weapon that you can use in a game. You have a lot of points into strength, since this is a strength-focused build, which further boosts your physical damage. You have a lot of points into warfare, which further boosts physical damage. And you have points into two-handed, which not only boosts your damage, but also your critical multiplier. So when you critically hit, you're going to deal even more damage. So those things combined allow you to deal exceptionally high damage with all of your attacks, and since we know that stripping armor is such an important part of this game, because then you can CC, then you can follow up with skills that CC targets. And those skills are Battle Stomp, Battering Ram, and Tentacle Lash. All three of these skills allow you to CC targets once physical armor has been stripped. Battle Stomp will knock them down, as will Battering Ram, and Tentacle Lash will make it so that they can't attack on their next turn with a physical damage weapon. So these are really, really strong, and what this does is it allows you to go ham on the enemy, then CC them with a skill, then they can't do anything next turn. You can keep wailing on them, then you can CC them again the following turn, then you keep wailing on them, and you just keep the pressure up, and you never really take any damage. And of course, everything doesn't always go according to plan, so having some durability is important, and what makes this build really, really shine compared to just the damage it deals in the CC, which any build can do, is its excellent survivability as well. It has very high physical armor because of the high strength that it has, because strength-based armor is physical armor usually, and it has a way to not only replenish its physical armor, but also a way to replenish its magic armor. And the way it replenishes its physical armor is via Bone Cage. Bone Cage gets stronger the more corpses there are around you. If you go ham and kill a bunch of targets quickly with very, very high damage, and then use Bone Cage to replenish your armor afterward, then you just made this skill stronger by being aggressive, so that works out really well. And it has a couple of ways to replenish its magic armor as well. First is Armor of Frost, which simply just gives you more magic armor. But the second is that it has points in Necromancer, which gives you lifesteal when you deal damage to the vitality of a target, and heals you for health. Well, that's not particularly useful for this build because you're not trying to lose your armor, but when you use the Living Armor talent, it will actually replenish some of that as magic armor. So when you deal vitality damage to an enemy, you'll actually automatically replenish magic armor just from attacking, which allows you to continue being aggressive. And you can even improve the amount of lifesteal you have using the Vampiric Hunger skill if you need more in order to regenerate more magic armor to keep you going. So you really cannot get, outstripped of armor very easily because you have ways to replenish physical and magic armor. So next is the Ranger build, and there are a variety of different Ranger builds out there, and essentially what these types of builds do is they deal very high, usually single target, physical damage at range using a bow. They have some AoE, but generally speaking, they're more of a single damage, precision damage dealer to take out one target very effectively. But with my build, you're not going to get as much damage out of your range damage as you would other Huntsman-focused builds, and that's because we have some points into summoning in order to be able to summon and deal ranged damage. And you might be wondering, why would you split your points in Summoning and Huntsman and not be as effective at both? But the reality is, when you're playing Divinity Original Sin 2, if you're playing any sort of summoner, you can only put so many points in Summoning to make your summon stronger, and then your points have to go somewhere. And your character has to be able to do some sort of damage in some way, and I found that Huntsman is probably the best overall way to do that, and there are a couple reasons for that. First of all, if you summons during your turn, whether it's totems or, a familiar or an incarnate or whatever, you're going to be using a lot of action points for that. So if you play a melee-focused summoner, you have to then use action points to move into melee range and then attack. And you generally don't have enough action points in one turn to summon, move, and attack, but you do have enough action points to summon and attack if you have a ranged weapon where you cast a spell. So that naturally led me down the Huntsman path. And what made me choose Huntsman over maybe some other spellcasting class, generally, you can absolutely do builds with other spellcasting classes, or skill lines, and I have, and they work really, really well. But what I really love about the Ranger is that because they have arrows that they can use that deal different damage types and leave different effects on the ground, whether it's fire or oil or water or whatever, if you summon your incarnate on those surfaces, it will actually change the damage type of that summons to that damage type and will give them different abilities, which gives you a lot of versatility, right? Maybe physical damage is fine for 80% of the fights that you're doing, but maybe some other fights you really need a specific damage type because of the resistances of the enemy. Now you can, use your arrow and then summon your incarnate in there, and you can do whatever type you want. Whereas if you're playing a spellcaster, you're generally using 1 or 2 spellcasting skill lines, so you can only summon like another fire incarnate or another earth incarnate, or usually another water incarnate or another lightning incarnate. Those two usually pair well together, those pairings. But you don't have the versatility of all of the different ways you can do it, whereas someone who uses arrows can, which is what I love about this build. Next, we're going to take a look at the Tidalist. And the Tidalist is essentially a Hydrosophist-focused mage that is really deadly in combat for a couple of reasons. First of all, has lots of AoE spells. AoE is super important for getting rid of enemies quickly, and combined with the frozen status effect and the amount of freezing she can do, she has a lot of CC as well. And just like the Eternal Warrior, because she can do a lot of damage and also CC simultaneously, it adds a lot to your group, because when enemies are CC'd, they can't deal damage to you, and that protects your group. Except she does this against magic armor, while the Eternal Warrior does it against physical armor. So if you have 2 of those in your group, like a Tidalist and an Eternal Warrior, they should be focused on different targets in order to be able to CC different enemies. And another really good thing about the Tidalist is that it has decent survivability as well, because it can replenish its magic armor very effectively, so it really only has to worry about targets that deal physical damage to it. It doesn't really have to worry about enemies that deal magic damage as much, because they're not really going to get through that. Because they have a lot of points on Hydrosophist, their magic armor regeneration from Armor of Frost is going to be very, very high. So they're going to have a lot of magic armor, especially from having high intelligence as well. And the other thing, too, is that I like to use dual wands on my Tidalist, because if you've ever played a pure caster in Divinity Original Sin 2, if you're just going down one skill line, you'll typically realize that you blow through all of your skills really quickly, and then you're waiting for them to come off cooldown, and you can't really do anything. So you definitely want to focus on dual wands in order to keep your damage up in between cooldowns. And obviously, using something like Skin Graft in order to replenish your cooldowns is very strong on this build as well. But you're going to use dual wands in the meantime in order to help keep stripping that magic armor, so you can use your CCs very effectively to freeze and chill targets. And another really good thing about this build is that it pairs well with other water and lightning mages, or even earth mages. The only real mage you don't want to pair this with usually is fire mages, because they tend to strip off your frozen status effect and shield, and that's obviously not very good for your build. So the next build we're going to take a look at is another spellcasting build, and this one I call the Tectonic Sage, and it's actually a newer build than a lot of the other builds that I've made, because it relies on the Torturer talent that was introduced with the enhanced edition of the game, which came out like a year or 2 after the actual version of the game. So what this talent does is it allows you to put certain status effects through armor. Usually you have to strip armor before you can apply status effects, but with this talent, certain ones you don't. These are Burning, Poison, Bleeding, Necrofire, Acid, Suffocating, Entangled, Death Wish, and Ruptured Tendons. All of these can be applied without stripping armor. And one really amazing thing about this build, if you use an elf as well, is that you can use Flesh Sacrifice to create a pool of blood on you on your first turn, and then if you use Contamination, you'll actually turn that pool of blood to poison. And if you have Elemental Affinity when you do this, it will reduce the cost of all your earth spells by 1 AP, allowing you to just spam earth spells on your very first turn, setting poison, tangling targets, knocking them down in some cases, or at least completely removing their magic armor, allowing other characters in your team to CC them if necessary. And you have a lot of AoEs with this build, so you can just fling AoEs into the group. And if you use Medusa Head after you've stripped all this magic armor from the targets with all these AoEs, you can petrify all these targets so they can't do anything. And it really creates a deadly scenario, because you don't have to get rid of the armor first. It just makes things a lot easier. And again, this is a newer build that was simply made possible by a talent that was added with the enhanced edition of the game. And the last build we come to is the Juggernaut build. This is another one of my favorite builds, and I think it's probably second behind the Eternal Warrior in terms of like warrior builds out there, in terms of their successfulness. And what's cool about this build is it's doesn't only do physical damage, but it also does a mix of earth damage as well, because some earth spells actually scale off strength. And a lot of earth spells actually deal physical damage as well. So if you have a lot of points in warfare, they benefit from it. So there is a bit of synergy between some earth spells and the warfare skill. So there is a natural synergy for the Juggernaut build. And something else that's really great about this build is you have very high physical armor due to the fact that you're wearing strength-based armor, which typically has high physical armor, as I mentioned earlier, but you also can use Fortify in order to give you even more physical armor. So enemies that deal physical damage to you aren't going to be that much of a challenge. But another really great thing is the Earth Skill Reactive Armor, which increases the amount of damage it does to everything near you based on your current physical armor value. So that's really good. And if you use a shield, you can boost your armor value even higher. You don't have to, but it's a good way if you like reactive armor. Other really good synergies with this are the Earthquake skill, which knocks down targets if they have no physical armor. So if you've been using other skills like Battle Stomp and things like that, Whirlwind, stripping the physical armor of targets, and then you use Earthquake, you can knock everything down, giving you another CC that the Eternal Warrior doesn't have. Or if you've been casting other earth spells that deal magic damage, or maybe your party has, you can pop Medusa Head and petrify them, so then you can CC them with that as well. Gives you a little bit more versatility, in my opinion, than the Eternal Warrior, but you don't quite have the survivability or outright damage that you have from that build. So these are the top 5 builds, I think, that are currently in the game. This doesn't take into account source skills. The source skills you can use in the game can make some builds just absolutely insane. But those are revolving around just the use of source to do some really powerful spell, and that turns into some crazy thing for a specific fight. My builds are more focused on every single fight, not having source. What can you do in that build? And I think these are 5 of, if not the best 5 builds in the game currently. What do you guys make of the Divinity news? Are you guys playing Divinity Original Sin 2 again, or are you playing it for the first time? Did you pick it up on sale? Are there builds out there that I didn't mention that you think are highly effective? Let me know in the comments below.
We'll be right back.